A star who once earned tens of millions of dollars a year was forced to sell almost everything he owned to pay off his debts. A teen idol whose face once covered magazine covers spent his final years without stable housing, while the actress, famous for playing Lois Lane, once wandered around in such a state of panic that no one recognized her. Behind Hollywood's red carpets and bright lights were people who once had money, mansions, and millions of fans, only to be dragged to rock bottom by declining careers, illness, broken relationships, and dangerous habits. Some had to sleep on the streets, live in their cars, or rely on the help of friends, showing that the distance between fame and having nowhere to return to can sometimes be much shorter than we imagine. What haunts me most is not how much money they lost. It is the fact that many of them still had to smile in public when their private lives had completely fallen apart. So who escaped the darkness, and who was swallowed by it forever? The first story begins with the woman who once stood beside Superman, but in the end, no superhero appeared to save her.
Behind the glitter, the scars remain. Welcome to Hollywood Stars and Scars.
Number 24, Margot Kidder. On screen, Margot Kidder was the sharp, stubborn, and energetic Lois Lane. Starring alongside Christopher Reeve in the Superman film series, she turned the female reporter into a cultural icon, an intelligent woman who is not afraid to walk into danger on her own. Born on October 17, 1948, in Yellowknife, Canada, Margot appeared in more than 100 film and television projects. Black Christmas and the Amityville Horror showed that she was remembered for more than Superman and had built a notable acting career. In 1996, Margot experienced a serious crisis related to bipolar disorder. For a brief period, she became disoriented, had no stable place to live, and had to depend on friends, strangers, and support facilities to get through the most difficult period of her life. The sight of Metropolis's strong female reporter searching for somewhere to sleep at night was heartbreaking to many people. After the crisis, Margot returned to work, although her roles were no longer as glamorous. She died on May 13, 2018, at the age of 69, leaving behind a brilliant legacy marked by many painful losses. While Margot showed how mental illness could pull a star away from reality, the next person proved that a masculine and attractive appearance could not protect someone from years of self-destructive behavior. Number 23, Jan Michael Vincent. In the early 1970s, Jan Michael Vincent had the ideal appearance of a Hollywood leading man. His angular face, blonde hair, and rebellious attitude made him a symbol of masculinity. He worked alongside John Wayne and Burt Reynolds and attracted attention with his role in Hooper. Behind that strong exterior was a life that gradually spiraled out of control. Vincent struggled with substance abuse, legal trouble, and numerous personal problems. As his career declined, acting offers became increasingly rare. By the early 2000s, his health and finances were in serious trouble. Vincent went through a period without stable housing in California, while years of substance abuse had taken a heavy toll. A later infection-related complication resulted in the amputation of part of his leg. That image was completely different from the young man once seen as Hollywood's wild heart. Jan Michael Vincent died of cardiac arrest on February 10, 2019, at the age of 74 in a North Carolina hospital. But the collapse of an adult was still not as painful as watching a child grow up in front of the cameras, only to discover that the world no longer had a place for her once the show ended. Number 22, Erin Moran. In Happy Days, Erin Moran played Joni Cunningham, the lovable younger sister adored by American audiences. The romance between Joni and Chachi made her a familiar face in teen magazines, but television fame could not protect her from the difficulties of real life. After the show ended, acting opportunities became increasingly scarce, and her income grew unstable. Hollywood continued searching for younger faces, while the breakdown of her marriage and alcohol-related problems gradually caused Erin's life to spiral out of control. In 2010, she had to leave her home in California, lived in unstable circumstances, and depended on relatives. The media repeatedly exploited Erin's decline, turning her personal struggles into entertainment. On April 22, 2017, Erin died at the age of 56 from complications of stage 4 squamous cell carcinoma in her throat. To many viewers, she will always remain the young Joni from the brightest years of American television. However, the next person did not just lose his career. He also had to live with the consequences of a decision he made when he was young that permanently changed both his life and the life of a friend. Number 21. Leif Garrett. Leif Garrett was once the idol of millions of teenage girls with his blonde hair, romantic appearance, and the song "I Was Made for Dancing." By the end of the 1970s, he had become one of the most prominent teen stars and appeared to have a promising future ahead of him. But fame at such an early age brought dangerous habits with it. Substance abuse gradually overshadowed his career, leading to legal trouble, financial difficulties, and periods without stable housing. Despite numerous attempts to make a comeback, addiction repeatedly pulled him back to where he had started. Leif also carried the trauma of a car accident that happened while he was driving under the influence, leaving the friend who was with him seriously injured. The consequences became a burden that neither money nor apologies could erase. In later years, Leif spoke publicly about his struggles and tried to rebuild his life. Audiences looked at him with nostalgia and regret because the golden boy of pop music now existed mainly in old photographs. While teen fame led Leif toward dangerous choices, Dana Plato entered an even lonelier nightmare when Hollywood decided she no longer had any value. Number 20. Dana Plato. Dana Plato died when she was only 34 years old, but her tragedy had begun long before, when audiences stopped seeing her as Kimberly Drummond from Different Strokes. On screen, Kimberly was a charming girl living in a family where every problem could be resolved quickly. In real life, Dana struggled to make the transition from child star to adult actress. Opportunities became scarce, her finances were unstable, and her dependence on drugs led to legal trouble and periods without stable housing. The bitter irony was that she had appeared in a famous family television show, but lacked a strong enough support network when her own life collapsed. Dana tried to seek treatment and return to her career, but the same difficulties continued to repeat themselves. On May 8, 1999, Dana died after overdosing on prescription medication. Her death was later determined to be connected to an act of ending her own life, bringing the sad story of a once-beloved star to a close. And then we come to a country singer who sang about love while her own romantic life was increasingly turning into a battlefield. Number 19. Mindy McCready. In the mid-1990s, Mindy McCready emerged in country music with 10,000 Angels and Guys Do It All the Time. From a young woman in Florida, she quickly became a promising star because of her powerful voice, attractive appearance, and confident presence. But behind the love songs was a life filled with instability. Mindy struggled with addiction, arrests, probation violations, broken relationships, and child custody disputes. Every time she attempted a comeback, another crisis pushed her backward. She entered rehabilitation programs several times and returned to the public eye, giving fans hope that things would improve. However, Mindy's recovery journey was repeatedly interrupted by old difficulties. On February 17, 2013, Mindy died at the age of 37. Her story shows that mental health problems and addiction require long-term support, especially for people under pressure from fame, family, and their personal lives. But the next case unfolded in the middle of some of the wealthiest streets in Los Angeles, where a former model had to search through trash for food, only a few miles from the world of Hollywood. Number 18. Loni Willison. Images of Loni Willison living on the streets of Los Angeles once shocked many people. She had previously worked as a model, been involved in the entertainment industry, and was known through her marriage to an actor who had appeared in Baywatch. With her blonde hair, athletic figure, and striking appearance, Loni once represented the glamorous image of Southern California. Following a turbulent marriage and a widely discussed separation, Loni's life quickly became unstable. Problems involving her physical health, mental well-being, and ability to work gradually pulled her away from her former life. Around 2015, she began living on the streets of Los Angeles and frequently rejected or avoided people who tried to approach her with offers of help. In a city filled with luxury stores, expensive cars, and enormous billboards, Loni struggled to find food and basic necessities. Several organizations offered treatment and housing assistance, but she has still been unable to escape her difficult circumstances. Loni's story shows that homelessness is often connected to health problems, trauma, and a loss of trust, rather than simply a lack of money. From a model on the streets, we turn to a music idol who once made stadiums shake, but was ultimately crushed by his own perfect public image. Number 17, David Cassidy. David Cassidy was once the idol of millions of American teenage girls when he played Keith Partridge in The Partridge Family. With his flowing hair, charming smile, and the song I Think I Love You, he quickly became a symbol of youth. David's image appeared across magazine covers and countless products made for fans. But behind the spotlight, David increasingly felt trapped in the image of the perfect young man created by the studio and the public. His exhausting performance schedule, constant scrutiny, and pressure to maintain his fame led him toward alcohol and drugs. Over time, his relationships broke down, his career declined, and his money gradually disappeared. During the final years of his life, David declared bankruptcy, lost his home, and had to live in unstable circumstances. He once spoke about the shame of being someone admired by millions of people who could no longer provide a secure life for himself. David died on November 21, 2017, leaving behind songs connected to the youth of an entire generation and a sad story behind his fame. The next person was not a blonde teen idol. He was a rapper who wore the most famous baggy pants in the world and spent money so quickly that even tens of millions of dollars could not save him. Number 16, MC Hammer. In 1990, MC Hammer virtually dominated the music industry with You Can't Touch This. His signature dance moves and baggy pants turned him into a cultural icon. At his peak, Hammer reportedly earned around $33 million a year and built an image resembling a true entertainment empire. However, the money disappeared quickly because of his enormous expenses. He purchased a large house, luxury cars, a private jet, and maintained an entourage of more than 200 people. When his income declined, taxes, lawsuits, and debts hit him all at once. In 1996, Hammer filed for bankruptcy, with reported debts of more than $14 million, and his mansion and many personal possessions had to be sold to meet his financial obligations. After the collapse, Hammer continued producing music and became involved in technology businesses, media projects, and community activities. He never returned to his former peak, but he managed to build a more stable life. Hammer's story shows that a high income does not guarantee lasting wealth when spending and financial responsibilities are not properly controlled. While Hammer lost an empire because he lived too extravagantly, Willie Aames lost his direction when audiences no longer saw him as television's lovable young boy. Number 15, Willie Aames. Willie Aames once represented the image of wholesome American youth through 8 is Enough and several roles he played as a teenager. With his bright face and friendly personality, he quickly became an idol. But as he grew older, Willie struggled to escape his former image, and his career gradually slowed down. The disappointments of the 1980s led him toward alcohol and drugs. Poor decisions resulted in arrests, bankruptcy, and the loss of his home. By 2007, Willie had experienced a period without stable housing in Vancouver, forcing him to confront the reality that his former fame could no longer help him overcome his difficulties. The turning point came when Willie admitted that he needed help, entered recovery programs, and gradually rebuilt his life. He later volunteered to help people in similar circumstances, became a speaker, and continued appearing in several entertainment projects. Willie's journey shows that recovery can still begin even when someone believes they have lost everything. That comeback brings us to Natasha Lyonne, who once nearly disappeared into New York before being reborn as one of the most distinctive voices in modern television. Number 14, Natasha Lyonne. Before becoming famous for Russian Doll and Orange is the New Black, Natasha Lyonne was a child actress who grew up in a deeply unstable family. She appeared on screen at an early age and quickly attracted attention because of her distinctive, raspy voice, intelligent acting style, and appearance that differed from the familiar Hollywood standard. Natasha's teenage years were marked by family conflict, expulsion from school, and increasingly serious substance abuse. Arrests, periods of treatment, and health problems nearly caused her career to disappear. Around 2005, Natasha no longer had stable housing and had to rely on support facilities to survive the most difficult period of her life. Natasha's comeback was slow but steady. She began with small roles, maintained her sobriety, and gradually regained the industry's trust. Orange is the New Black opened new opportunities, while Russian Doll allowed her to establish her talents in acting, writing, and directing. But immediately after A Story of Rebirth comes one of the most horrifying family tragedies in American music history. Number 13. Marvin Gaye. On April 1st, 1984, just one day before his 45th birthday, Marvin Gaye was at his parents' home in Los Angeles. Following a heated argument with his father, gunshots rang out, and the artist who had created What's Going On and Sexual Healing was struck down by the very man who had raised him. That shocking ending nearly overshadowed an extraordinary career and many years of turmoil. Marvin possessed a smooth voice, capable of turning subjects such as war, injustice, love, and loneliness into deeply emotional music. He was one of the greatest icons of Motown's golden era, but behind the spotlight was a troubled life involving substance abuse, finances, taxes, and complicated family relationships. The most heartbreaking part was that Marvin always wanted his father's approval, even though their relationship contained so much pain. The house that should have been a final place of peace instead became the place where his life ended. Marvin's music continues to live on, but after that tragedy, his voice seems to carry an even deeper sadness. From a Motown legend, the story moves to a television actress who once made audiences laugh, while her life away from the set increasingly spiraled out of control. Number 12. Lisa Robin Kelly. Lisa Robin Kelly was remembered by audiences for playing Lori Foreman in That 70s Show. With her attractive appearance, mischievous personality, and unpredictable acting style, she quickly became one of the most memorable faces on the popular sitcom. However, Lisa suddenly left the show when her personal life began falling into crisis. Substance-related problems led to multiple arrests and personal conflicts, causing her public image to deteriorate. Producers became cautious about working with her, and acting opportunities gradually disappeared. Although she tried several times to seek treatment and return to the screen, Lisa continued to be mentioned in the media, mainly because of scandals. On August 15, 2013, she died at a treatment facility at the age of 43 from multiple drug intoxication, leaving behind sadness among those who had loved the sharp-witted Lori Foreman on television. The next person did not lose his career because of addiction. He lost years of freedom because he believed fame could place him beyond the obligations that every citizen is required to follow. Number 11. Wesley Snipes. During the 1990s, Wesley Snipes was one of Hollywood's most prominent action stars. From New Jack City and White Men Can't Jump to his martial arts roles, he impressed audiences with his strong, humorous, and confident style. Snipes' career was shaken by tax problems. In 2008, he was convicted of failing to file federal tax returns and received a 3-year prison sentence, seriously damaging the image of a top Hollywood star. After his release in 2013, Snipes returned to acting, but no longer held the same position he once had. His years away and financial scandal became an inseparable part of his name. Although there is no confirmation that he was ever homeless, Wesley's story still represents a significant fall from the top. He lost his freedom, career opportunities, and part of his reputation, but continued working toward a return to Hollywood. While Wesley had to face the law, Randy Quaid claims that Hollywood itself was pursuing him through a conspiracy that sounded more like a screenplay than any movie. Number 10. Randy Quaid. Randy Quaid was once one of Hollywood's most prominent supporting actors. He gained critical recognition through The Last Detail and became unforgettable as Cousin Eddie in the National Lampoon's Vacation film series. Randy's life changed when he and his wife, Evie Quaid, became repeatedly involved in disputes concerning hotels' property and illegal occupancy. The couple also claimed they were being pursued by a secret group they called the Hollywood Star Whackers. They later left the United States for Canada in search of protection, while their legal problems continued. Randy's career nearly came to a standstill, and the image of a respected actor was gradually replaced by controversial statements. From an award-nominated star, Randy became a man constantly living with suspicion and anxiety. In the end, fame and money could not help him regain a sense of safety. And while Randy was haunted by a conspiracy within Hollywood, John Drew Barrymore carried the curse of the most famous family in American theater. Number 9. John Drew Barrymore. John Drew Barrymore was born in 1932 into one of Hollywood's most famous families. As the son of the legendary John Barrymore and the father of Drew Barrymore, he inherited both fame and the burden of living beneath his family's enormous shadow. He had an attractive appearance and appeared in While the City Sleeps and several other films. However, constant comparisons with his father made it difficult for John to establish his own position, while substance abuse arrests and an unstable personal life gradually weakened his career. John became increasingly distant from Hollywood and his family. For a time, he lived a wandering life and nearly disappeared from public view. He died on November 29, 2004, at the age of 72. Despite their deeply troubled relationship, Drew Barrymore continued supporting her father during the final years of his life. The next person was also a child star, but instead of carrying a famous Hollywood family name, he carried memories of a celebrated childhood and a violent father. Number 8. Danny Bonaduce. Danny Bonaduce became famous as a child through his role as Danny Partridge in The Partridge Family. Although he was loved by millions of American viewers, behind the stage lights, he grew up in a tense household and later said that he had been abused by his father. When the show ended, Danny gradually lost his direction, his work, and even his sense of self-worth. Substance abuse arrests and unstable relationships quickly pushed his life downhill. At one point, he went bankrupt and had to live in his car while still pretending that everything was normal. After years of struggle, Danny gradually rebuilt his career in radio. His humor, honesty, and ability to turn his failures into truthful stories helped him find his place again and prevented his past from becoming the final chapter of his life. However, Amanda Peterson did not have the opportunity to make a similar comeback. She left Hollywood quietly and only returned to the headlines when it was already too late. Number 7. Amanda Peterson. In 1987, Amanda Peterson became an icon of the American high school girl through her role as Cindy Mancini in Can't Buy Me Love. Before she was even 20 years old, she already possessed the beauty, confidence, and appeal of a highly promising star. However, the projects that followed did not achieve the same success. Amanda gradually left Hollywood, returned to Colorado, and lived privately while dealing with mental health problems, substance abuse, financial difficulties, and several legal issues. On July 3, 2015, Amanda died at home at the age of 43 from an accidental overdose. The news left many viewers with a sense of loss, because in their memories, she remained the young and radiant Cindy Mancini on screen. While Amanda disappeared from the screen, Haim tried to make several comebacks. But every time hope appeared, his past pulled him even deeper. Number 6. Haim. Haim was one of the most prominent teen idols of the 1980s because of Lucas, The Lost Boys, and License to Drive. Alongside Corey Feldman, he formed the duo known as the Two Coreys, becoming a familiar symbol to an entire generation of young viewers. However, early fame placed Corey in a deeply unstable environment. He began depending on drugs at a very young age, while trauma within the entertainment industry and the rejection of movie studios made the situation increasingly serious. Corey later faced financial difficulties, went through a period without stable housing, and had to depend on his mother. Despite repeated treatment appearances on reality television and attempts to return, his recovery often unfolded in front of the cameras. On March 10, 2010, Corey died at the age of 38 from pneumonia while in poor health, leaving behind regret over a talent who never had the chance to grow into adulthood in peace. From a lost teen idol, the story moves to a comedian who once lived in poverty before making the entire world laugh, only to later question whether fame could truly bring happiness. Number 5. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey became one of the biggest comedy stars of the 1990s through Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. Few people knew that before he became famous, his family experienced financial hardship and spent a period living in a van. Jim began working at an early age to help support his family and carried the fear of losing everything, even after achieving enormous wealth. Success and money could not erase his periods of depression, feelings of emptiness, and emotional pain, which he openly discussed. Following the death of his former girlfriend, Jim became more private, spending time painting, creating, and reflecting on the real identity behind fame. He did not lose all his money or become homeless, but his story revealed a different kind of loss. Someone can possess everything and still feel that they do not truly belong anywhere. Jim's emptiness was emotional. For Brett Butler, the fall was visible in Bill's illness, and the risk of losing her home after the show bearing her name was canceled. Number 4. Brett Butler. In Grace Under Fire, Brett Butler played Grace Kelly, a sharp-witted single mother trying to rebuild her life. The show became a major success beginning in 1993, earning her critical praise and establishing her as a prominent comedy figure on American television. However, problems involving substance abuse and unpredictable behavior made the set increasingly tense. Production was interrupted several times, professional relationships broke down, and the show was canceled in 1998, causing Brett to quickly lose both her career and her reputation. Her finances gradually ran out afterward. Brett left Los Angeles and at one point had to depend on a shelter and the help of others. She even faced the risk of losing her home, despite returning for several small roles. The bitter irony was that her television show had told the story of a woman overcoming addiction and poverty, while in real life, Brett had to fight those same problems without a complete happy ending. But while Brett lost her money, as an adult, Gary Coleman claimed that his fortune had been controlled and depleted from the time he was still a child. Number 3. Gary Coleman. With just the line, "What you talking about, Willis?" Gary Coleman became one of the most famous child stars in American television history. In different strokes, his small stature, intelligence, and natural comedic ability made audiences love him and allowed him to earn a large income from a very young age. However, Gary had a congenital kidney condition and required treatment for many years. When the show ended, the appearance that had once made him appealing made it difficult for him to find adult roles. He also discovered that most of the money he had earned during childhood had disappeared, leading to a lawsuit against his parents and former manager, as well as years of financial difficulty. Gary later took on various jobs, appeared on reality television, and eventually filed for bankruptcy. He died on May 28, 2010, at the age of 42, following an injury that caused bleeding in his brain. Audiences still remember the laughter he brought them, but behind it was the story of a child star who earned a fortune without ever having real control over it. The next case took place in the age of social media, where every one of Aaron Carter's crises was broadcast live in front of millions of people. Number 2. Aaron Carter. Aaron Carter became a star at a very young age through Aaron's Party and I Want Candy, quickly becoming known as one of the most prominent teen idols of the late 1990s. However, behind his cheerful stage image were prolonged family conflicts and financial disputes. As an adult, Aaron faced bankruptcy, legal trouble, mental health problems, and substance dependence. During the final years of his life, he shared almost every personal crisis on social media, from his treatment efforts and broken relationships to his attempts to return to music. On November 5, 2022, Aaron died at home at the age of 34. The official report determined that the cause was accidental drowning related to difluoroethane and alprazolam. His story shows the danger of personal crises being turned into content for the public to follow, while genuine help remains far too limited. And in the final position is the man who once played Gary Coleman's older brother. He went through addiction prison and the near loss of everything, but his story did not end with an obituary. Number 1. Todd Bridges. Todd Bridges became famous for playing Willis Jackson Arnold's calm older brother in Different Strokes. On screen, he was part of a loving television family, but behind the spotlight were difficult experiences that the public knew almost nothing about at the time. After the show ended, Todd developed a dependence on drugs, leading to multiple arrests, conflicts, and time in prison. He nearly lost all his money, his career, and his freedom before deciding to enter recovery, accept responsibility, and rebuild his life from the beginning. Todd later maintained his recovery continued acting and actively supported mental health and addiction recovery programs. While Dana Plato and Gary Coleman both died at young ages, Todd is still here to tell his story, showing that the past does not necessarily have to determine the rest of someone's life. The first lesson is very clear. Money must be managed even when the income seems as though it will never end. Hammer, Gary Coleman, and many others show how quickly a fortune can disappear when control, tax obligations, and spending are not carefully considered. The second lesson is even more important. Mental health problems do not distinguish between famous people and ordinary people. Someone may be appearing on television, smiling in photographs, or saying that they are fine, while silently falling into crisis. When someone begins behaving unusually, isolates themselves, or loses the ability to care for themselves, what they need is not ridicule. They need professional support, patience, and a community that does not walk away when things become difficult. So which story made you think the most? Share the name of the person you remember most in the comments. And if you enjoy stories that explore the dark side behind the glamour of Hollywood, please like and subscribe to Hollywood Stars and Scars. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Appreciate the people who are beside you. Do not be afraid to seek help when life becomes too overwhelming. And remember that a person's value has never been determined by how much money they own or how many people recognize their face. I will see you again in the next story, where we will continue looking beyond the bright lights of Hollywood to discover the real people behind the legends.